somebody else asked this, is when you left in 1999, ECW still had a lot of stars. Mid-sized arenas were getting packed out, games, merchandise, pay-per-views, as we were alluding to just before. Aside from when checks started bouncing, can you pinpoint exactly when you decided that ECW maybe either wasn't going to make it long-term or that ECW was no longer for you?
Yeah, well, it was a while, because there was this dance that we would do in ECW. It doesn't take a mathematician or a brain surgeon to look and see, go to dressing room full of salaries, airfares, hotels, per diems, and you can see what the crowd is bringing in. In those early years, we're wrestling in Jim Fort, Pennsylvania, 150 people maybe in the building, and the checks are clearing. Now we're wrestling in front of 5,000 plus people and bouncing like a rubber ball. For me, I was always pretty thrifty with money. So I would go to Paul and tell him, like, look, the Chris Chettys and Danny Dorings and Roadkills and Mike Whipwrecks, these guys, they're living check to check. Some of them have kids at home. I can forego a few weeks of no paycheck, to take care of those guys. And well, he started to. And then it started growing. Now, this had happened previously, so it wasn't necessarily a red flag when it started happening. There were multiple times, 2 or 3 that I can recall, where Paul would fall behind on my pay. I think previous high before that was around 36,000. A chunk of money, right? So, it's not going to make you independently wealthy, but it's for a blue collar income.
You'll miss it.
Fair amount of money. Yeah. And, but then he would do something like, I'd run a 3-town loop, and the third day he'd give me the entire gate, even if it was more money, right? It'd say he owes me 30 and it's 36,000. Yeah, just keep the rest. And so I had no real reason to not trust him. And where I started putting myself behind the 8 ball was when I would promote the Pittsburgh towns, Western Pennsylvania, Eastern Ohio, Northern Ohio. That was my area to promote for ECW. That I learned very quickly, if you buy, say, a $5,000 TV ad spot, Paul may or may not get the check to you on time, but he'll probably most definitely not get the tape into traffic on time. So you've paid for this time, you're nothing errant. So rather than stress myself out like that, I would just pay for the stuff up front and then get reimbursed on the backside. Unfortunately for me, this is now when ECW is starting, the debt is starting to go like this. Mm-hmm. And again, I had no reason to not believe, to not be faithful in Paul, or that he would screw me, until it got to a point where it was, a lot of money. And it wasn't just money that I was owed. It was probably better than half of that was money that I had spent out of pocket promoting shows for Pittsburgh. So it was really putting me in the hole, like doubly in the hole. And the last night I worked for him, didn't know it was going to be the last night, but I was the guy in the dressing room telling the kids, I've seen this before. You might want to start looking for greener pastures because the ship's going down. And I think from Paul's point of view, again, not a good thing, not a bad thing. I was describing it. He would have known someone like Shane Douglas, who's been around the business for a good chunk of time. He's the one that can flip this whole thing, right? If he gets them to all walk out with him or something, or to see what exactly is going on here. And the last check he gave me, $5,000-$6,000, something like that. We were in the New York area. I forget if we were in New York exactly or close to there, but we stayed in town an extra day so that Monday morning we could be at his bank to cash that check and beat all the others in. It was an odd meeting because we went into the bank, and the teller told us there was plenty of money in there, but that she couldn't cash this check. And I said to her, got a manager, and I told the manager, I said, is this your bank? She said, yes. I said, is that a valid check? And she said, yes. And I said, then by law, you have to cash it. And she went and called Paul and came back and said, he told me to cash it, but he never wants to see your face again. Tell him he never will. And that was how my end came in ECW. Although there were a few things after that happened, but suffice to say that the money bouncing like that, we love this business, but we pay our bills with this business. And just like somebody working in a grocery store or an office building, when that check comes, our bills are as real as anybody else's, right? When my electric bill comes, I need to pay my electric. When my mortgage comes, I need to pay my mortgage. And I do this in order to facilitate that. So when this becomes an issue now, that's dropping further and further and further behind, it's just a matter of time at that point. Because again, we've seen that movie. Now that movie ends. And, the shame of it was that Paul had an amazing ability to understand what the fans wanted, and then to either bring them ever so closely to that or swerve them. But either one draws money. In my experience, he was probably the most prescient of bookers and company owners in that sense, because you can watch it on any of that ECW footage that still holds up today. Unfortunately, all respect to Paul, a great booker, not a businessman, right? And unfortunately, we all learned that too late. Mikey Whipwreck, not Mikey Whipwreck, Joey Styles, Taz, Tommy. There were a whole bunch of us that were doing other jobs for the company behind the scenes that we weren't being remunerated for. But we knew that if we didn't do it, it wasn't getting done. So unfortunately for all of us, we all were in the same vein, thinking, okay, like, it's a little rough spot. It's going to come back. We've been here before. And at that point, the ship was too far gone. It had taken on too much water at that point.